Hey guys, welcome back. So now we're getting back into the Darkhold series with the Darkhold Black Bolt one-shot. And this one right here is a different kind of twisted, because I can imagine a story like this just being one of Black Bolt's biggest fears, aside from death of the Inhumans of course, because that definitely happened. But with that said, let's get into it. But first, if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to catch the spills every week, and don't forget to hit that bell up top so we can squat up in the comments for the first hour. Alright, so with how this story starts off, Black Bolt finds himself with partial memories, with him not knowing where he's at or what event brought him to this place. But with him looking around and finding himself outside of the royal palace, and he looks around and he recognizes the terrain and he realizes that he's on the nearby moon, Taros. But even with him looking around and coming to this realization, he's still asking himself like, okay, well like how did I get here? And it's something he needs to figure out pretty quick, because as long as he's here, his throne sits empty. And with him trying to recall the prior events, it's here where a part of a memory comes back to him. And the first thing he remembers is being approached by Telegar, the royal physician, because Telegar had approached him earlier, warning him that Maximus had came to Telegar some time before to get his help in planning a coup against the throne. But with hearing this, Black Bolt, he totally believes it, because that's what Maximus does, or he used to do. But Telegar also tells Black Bolt that he refused to help Maximus, but even still that doesn't mean that Maximus isn't gonna go to others in order to continue with his plan. But for Black Bolt, with him remembering just this portion in this moment, it still leaves him with the question like, okay, if Maximus did set him up, and Black Bolt was given a warning, then how did he still end up out here? And the first thought that comes to mind is, well, he had to have been betrayed. But nonetheless, with him being out here on Taros, he still has to deal with the dangers of the terrain, which he quickly comes across by way of the Desert Kraken. And overall, Black Bolt he's well aware of the dangers that he'll find out on Taros, because since the royal city doesn't execute, they will often exile criminals to Taros, knowing good and well that their chances of survival would be very low. But with Black Bolt being caught off guard by the Desert Kraken, he does have a bit of a moment where he gets snatched up, and he says it's a bit of a byproduct to him living a life of silence, to where for many years he's trained himself to control his voice, which could potentially shatter worlds or even kill those close to him if he accidentally uttered something, like years ago with the accident where he tragically killed his parents. But for Black Bolt, he also expresses that there's moments to where with him being silent for so long, and also him being so good at being silent, that often he'll forget that he has a voice. And it's here where he lets the Desert Kraken hear that voice, which from here just liquefies the Kraken, allowing Black Bolt to make it out alive. But after this, as Black Bolt makes his way to climb the mountain of survivors, which we'll talk about more in a little bit, but on his way up, he continues to remember more from earlier in his conversation with Telegar and where that it went shortly after. Because earlier, Telegar had informed Black Bolt that Maximus had wanted Telegar to perform an advanced molecular surgery to change his appearance, in order to make Maximus an exact copy of one of the ministers, which would effectively allow Maximus to make his way into the palace and pose as anyone to then take down Black Bolt and the council with no one knowing that Maximus was even there. But at this point, Telegar, he's already informed the council that he was approached by Maximus, and at this point the council, they're a bit on edge, like they're paranoid, because if Maximus had already underwent this advanced molecular surgery, he could effectively be anyone standing here in this moment. So when the minister's security is kind of like, okay, now calm down, let's not make these accusations. And with hearing this, others on the council are looking around like, okay, yeah, that sounds like something Maximus would say. So it's like the paranoia is building quite a bit. But then it's here where we find that the scientists at the Ministry of Technology, that they've come up for a solution for this on short notice, so in the event that Maximus does make his way to the throne under the physical appearance of someone else, then they'll be able to truly identify who he is. And we come to find out that the method that they've come up with is a device called a memory detector, which in my opinion, it kind of has like your classic Reed Richards design signature written all over it, which in either case, like whether it's Fantastic Four or Inhumans, back at the time it was Jack Kirby either way, but either way it really feels to me like something Reed Richards would make. But as far as the memory detector, the way that it works, if anyone approaches it, it'll just display on this huge screen random memories so that others would know exactly who that person is. So even if Maximus turned himself into a one-to-one replica of one of the ministers, then the memory detector would just put him on blast. And with seeing this, like I could just imagine like somebody on the council's looking at this like, man, you do not want me to walk in front of that thing. Woo! Cause you so don't want to see these memories on the big screen. Matter of fact, every time I walk by, put a disclaimer up. Viewers' discretion is advised. But if somebody would have said that, they'd have been like, yup, that's Maximus. Take him to Taros. But for Black Bolt, with him remembering up to this point as far as the memory detector, at this time as we follow his journey on Taros, and we see that he's made his climb up to the top of the Mountain of Survivors. But as far as the top of the Mountain of Survivors, which also I want to point out that Black Bolt had to climb to, with him now thinking that Maximus had did something to him, to where now Black Bolt only has part of his memories, but also the inability to fly. And even still at this point, he's not sure if that's all the way Maximus, or if it's just the atmosphere of this moon messing with him. But here at the top of the Mountain of Survivors, this is where supplies are dropped off every so often for those who can make their way up here, because it's forbidden for supply crafts to land on the surface of Taros. But amongst these supplies, Black Bolt finds a self-use burial shroud, which is made for exiles who are like on the brink of death, so that they can crawl into it and send a signal for a supply ship to come through and pick up their body. It would seem this Black Bolt just figures that he'll use one of these shrouds to call for a supply ship so he can make his way home. But with him sending out this signal, he sees a ship approach from the palace, but it's not a supply ship. But even still, it bears the princely insignia. So right away, Black Bolt is like, that's gotta be Maximus. He's come out here to brag, or more or less make sure that Black Bolt doesn't make it back. So when Black Bolt sees the ship, he hollers at your boy, knocking the ship out of the sky and seemingly saving the day. But then again, come on, like this is a Darkhold story, and we ain't got no happy endings yet, so why we gonna start now? But we come to find out when Black Bolt opens the ship to see who's inside, he opens it up just to find that it's Telegar. And as Black Bolt pulls him out, Telegar's just going on about how I failed you, Prince. And in this moment, Black Bolt wishes that he could speak to tell him, like, no, you haven't failed me, you tried to warn me. And it's here where Telegar gives him the terrifying truth, like it just drops the bomb on him. Because it's here where Telegar tells him that he's not Black Bolt, but instead Black Bolt is actually Maximus, and that this plan has been in the works for years. And it's here where Telegar tells him that as Maximus, he had taken Telegar's family and threatened him with their lives, so that Telegar would complete the transformation. And with doing this, Maximus had Telegar tell Black Bolt a misleading version of his plan, saying that Maximus would come disguised as one of his ministers, when the plan had been for him to go in as Black Bolt all along. But after giving Maximus the physical appearance of his brother Black Bolt, it was beyond Telegar's means to give Maximus the ability of flight, but with the procedure using the Terrigen Mist, he was able to give Maximus Black Bolt's voice. So now with Maximus having the appearance and the voice of Black Bolt, the plan was nearly flawless, until they ran into the whole issue of the memory detectors. And it was then when Telegar then had to give Maximus Black Bolt's memories, but he couldn't just throw in Black Bolt's memories alongside with the memories of Maximus, because I assume the memory detectors would have had like a picture-in-picture kind of thing going on, and then his cover would have definitely been blown. So what Telegar had to do was suppress the memories of Maximus deeply and insert the memories of Black Bolt so it would seem like they were the only memories that were there. But for one, this was a very tricky procedure, with one person potentially holding 2 lifetimes of memories. Like, it already was a recipe for madness. But then also on top of that, there was the risk of Maximus not ever coming back, or even when he did, there's no telling how long that would take, whether that would be a month, a year, or a decade. But with this next part of the procedure being done, Telegar expresses that Maximus, he didn't have the training or the years of practicing and controlling his voice that Black Bolt actually had, and as a result, Maximus cried out and tore the lab down, barely giving Telegar enough time to get out of there. But with these being Telegar's more or less his last words, in this story, it leaves Black Bolt desperately uncertain of who he actually is, because at this point, he could take Telegar at his word and believe that he actually is Maximus, and at any point, whether months from now or years from now, Maximus could resurface. And if that's the case, then he should never go back to his throne, because eventually he would become Maximus, and Maximus would just take over. But he then thinks to himself, what if this was the plan of Maximus the whole time, to pull off this elaborate plan to where Black Bolt would truly believe that he is Maximus? Because if that's the case, then Black Bolt needs to get back as soon as possible. And there's a number of things that could sway this decision or this argument either way, because if you think about the fact that he can't fly right now, that'll have you like, oh man, he's got to be Maximus. But again, that could be the moon's atmosphere messing with his mind. But on the flip side, if he was Maximus, he would have accidentally made a sound earlier when he was attacked by the Desert Kraken, because Maximus lacks the training that the real Black Bolt truly has. So again, with the way that he's looking at all of this, all the information, it could go either way. And for that reason, in this moment, in this story, Black Bolt, he's not even sure about who he is. And because of that, he's just stuck here in the middle, because either decision, whether to go or to stay, either way, they could cost him everything. And so now real quick, I want to give a special shout out to all the patrons. Thank you guys for all of your support. And for anyone who's new here who wants more information on how to support the channel, I got a link below to where you can go to patreon.com/dopespill. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.